Okay.
I'm Jackie Johnson. I was privileged to be in the Peace Corps in Nicaragua in years 2000-2001. So my site during that time was in San Lorenzo, Boaco, and I spent about 20 months there in Nicaragua. I went in the Peace Corps at age 55, and I'm a nurse, so I chose the healthcare sector.
Could you say how you happened to decide at age 55 to go into the Peace Corps? Include that in the story.
Right. I always had in mind that it would be an amazing opportunity to give myself to be able to live in another country and live in a small community, learn a language, and do some projects and learn from the people there, and hopefully maybe share something that I also knew. So my time in Nicaragua was very special and very difficult because of learning the language at age 55. So I did not have an opportunity to study Spanish as a younger individual. Language was a big thing the whole time I was there. The biggest thing that I remember and the most fulfilling part was doing a project with latrines, and another volunteer and another volunteer just came in out of interest, and we wrote a small project grant for USAID to get some help financially, and we did 187 latrines. And it was based on our education when we first got in country was done by other current Peace Corps volunteers in country. So they told us how they did a latrine project. The first week, you give them what the project's going to happen, and they need to go dig their hole. Okay, the second week, you're going to talk about doing the plancha and the part of the latrine that goes underground. The third week, you build your casita, and if they don't do it in that order, they don't get the materials, and it works wonderfully. And so a big part of my job was to go around to all the individuals in the community to find out who needed latrines or who wanted them. And they basically all needed them, almost, yeah.
Did they all want them?
Right, yes, very much so. And it really had a good feeling of being able to help them with their own dignity and just pride of being able to have better hygiene and in their area, their little neighborhoods and that. So that was very rewarding.
Oh, thank you. Very good.
So I am Joanna DePollo, and I served in Nicaragua, or Nicaragua, if you say it properly in Spanish. And I was there from 2000 to 2002, and I lived in a little town called Somoto, which is a little pueblo up in the northern part bordering Honduras. And it's a very mountainous area, which is really pretty and nice climate. And some of my favorite stories, let's see, I'll give you two quickies. One of them was when I was actually able to get a cultural center started, which was really fun. There was a group of people that were trying to get a library started in the Casa de Cultura, which is the cultural center. And they didn't have enough resources. So I wrote a bunch of letters and got a bunch of donations, and I was able to get books donated from San Diego, from Europe, from South America, and basically started up this lovely library for the local kids. And then that grew into them wanting more and more, so I ended up getting computer parts donated and eventually started a computer lab, and then eventually got internet access and started the town's first internet cafe, which was a big thing for a little pueblito. One day when I was showering, and I thought that I was going to be turning on water, but sometimes what happens is the water doesn't always come out. So instead of turning water on, I turned the shower on and bugs drizzled out, which was really fun. There's my fun, cheesy story. So that's it. I have lots of stories, but those are a couple of them.
Hi, my name is Jacob Hall. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Nicaragua in a city called Ocotal of about 45,000 people from 2000 to 2002. And one of the stories that I've kept with me a bit stronger than others relates to Nicaraguan humility. And I always felt that the Nicaraguan people were just so humble and so open and so accepting to me. That's one of their national traits that I admired the most. And I taught a class of computers to young kids, mostly street kids, working youth, just to give them a little bit of self-esteem. And at the end of that class, we had this graduation ceremony, and we asked the kids to each bring people important to them in their life, whether it was a teacher or a parent or something. And I recall several of the parents that came from, you know, the neighborhoods at the edge of town, that these parents that were obviously maybe peasants or farm workers, and they only had one set of clothing, you know, and they used it to work in the farms every day. But when they came to that graduation ceremony, those white t-shirts and holey jeans and stained clothes, they were all washed and pressed and ironed. That they only had one set of clothes in the whole world, but for that day, for that important day for their child, they washed and ironed them, and they looked their very, very best. And so I remember that as just, it really inspired me that even if you don't have anything in this world, you know, you can do a lot just with the dignity you have as a human being. So I think that's something that the Nicaraguans taught me, and I'll keep with me for the rest of my life. One of the most interesting stories I have was, you know, kind of relating to Peace Corps security policies, and that you're always supposed to, you know, do your best to stay away from tumultuous situations and things that may be perceived as danger. Well, the city I was in was a pretty major city of about 45,000 people, but it was about 4.5 hours away from the capital city. And so often, you know, and it was just one road. There was this one 2-lane road to get there, and that was a great road if you're going to shut it down and strike against something. You know, people would travel from the whole north of the country to come and protest and hold a strike on that road. And I usually tried to avoid it, and Peace Corps would tell me about it, but I remember one time I was already on the bus, I was already on my way home, it was nighttime, and all of a sudden the bus in the middle of nowhere came to a screeching stop, and there are burning tires, and there are lots of people all about, and you know, my first instinct was, oh my God, I'm in that situation Peace Corps told me to stay out of. But as we all got escorted off the bus, I realized that the big dangerous strike in the rural countryside was just a lot of fun. You know, people playing music, and yeah, people were painting banners, and they were protesting, I don't know, bus drivers' wages or taxi drivers' stipends or something. But in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the dark in Nicaragua, there was a great party going on. So it was fun just to be on that bumpy bus that just stopped and screeched, and there was 10 seconds of fear followed by about 2 hours of fun until the strike was over and we were on our way again. So, you know, a lot of the things that we think of in America that are just really dangerous, you know, that they're just unusual to us, that, you know, in the end for the locals, that's just part of everyday life and everyday fun for them.
Carolyn Barrett. I served in Nicaragua 2008 to 2010. I was a community health volunteer. Probably one of the most interesting stories that I have was one that involved a group of women, a group of nursing women, and I was asked to do a presentation on nutrition to them. And so I made a comparison chart of some of the typical foods and what mothers would be feeding their children, and what some of the things that were available were, so that they could get an idea of what a better choice might be without actually saying you should eat this or that. And so, for example, I did a comparison of soda, which was a very common beverage for the children to drink, and underneath that I put milk. And so I had a comparison of an equal quantity, what the cost for each quantity was, and then the nutrients that were available from the different items. And I had a whole big long list of them, but for this sake I'll just do those two. And the mothers could see which would be a better choice for the same amount of money. And it was very interesting for me to do this. And then when I would come back to the States, or even in a phone conversation or an email, my sister-in-law here in the States said to me, well, don't they know that it's better to drink milk than soda? And you just know that if you don't have the knowledge, then you can't make a choice. When you have the knowledge, you can make a better choice. And so I could see as I was going down that list and making comparisons that the light bulb was going on and things were a better choice, that the women were learning what was a better choice.
My name is Elise Bernstein and I'm living in Raleigh, North Carolina. I served in Nicaragua from 2009 to 2010 and I lived in Lepacentro, León. So I was a teacher and I worked in the elementary schools in Nicaragua, and part of my project was to teach in the schools and then also to garden with them. And one day I was running late to school, so I threw on all my clothes and walked to school and got to school, and my students were like, "Profe, profe, teacher, teacher," and I was like, "Yeah," and I had put my shirt on inside out. And my kids were laughing at me so hard, and I was so embarrassed because here I was in my rural Nicaraguan school. There was no place for me to go turn my shirt right side out. I probably had been in sight for not that long, maybe 7 or 8 months, and I was just so embarrassed. So I was like, what can I do? My Spanish still isn't that good. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna pretend that this is really fashionable. And I told all my students that it was super fashionable in the United States to wear your shirts inside out. And so I pretended to be on the catwalk and walked through my classroom, put my hands on my hips, walked around like I was just so cool in my inside out shirt. And the next week I showed up to school. I completely forgotten that this had happened, and all my students were wearing their shirts inside out because they were trying to be just like me, which I thought was pretty cool.